What's up, everybody? We are moving on to our second lab on the heart. So last time we met, we did a bunch of stuff with heart anatomy, like basic heart anatomy. So I'm assuming you're good with that. All right? Hopefully you are. What we're looking at today is a sheep heart. We are looking at a sheep heart right now. All right. And I'm starting with this one. I don't know how I ended up on slide 2. I want to be on slide 1 here. This is a nice looking sheep heart right here. Okay? What I want to point out is you got to be able to orient yourself. This is the front of the sheep heart. All right? I know it's the front because I can see this line here. Sometimes it's like just a really fatty line. Sometimes you can see the line. Sometimes it's just like a bunch of fat. That right there is called the anterior interventricular sulcus. Remember, a sulcus is like a depression, a groove. You saw sulci in the brain last semester. So anterior interventricular sulcus, it's diagonal in the front right there. That is a clue that tells you that this is the front of the sheep heart. Now, interventricular, what does that mean? That means between the ventricles. So what I got is my right ventricle right here, and I got my left ventricle right here. All right? Now, there's another clue that this is the front. I want to draw your attention to this little wrinkly flappy thing. Anytime we say wrinkly flappy thing, you should be thinking about the auricles of the atria. So that is the right auricle. That is the right auricle right there. Okay? And we can see the auricles with a flap. You can see the left one over here. Here's the left auricle. You can see that right there. The auricles have a flap in the front. So between that auricle and that sulcus, that's my right ventricle. Then on the underside of my sulcus, including the apex down here, that is my left ventricle. If you squeeze it, the left ventricle will feel firmer, the right ventricle will feel squishier because the left has more muscle because it's got to pump blood with greater pressure, greater distance. All right, so we got our right auricle, our right ventricle, we got our left ventricle as well. There's our left auricle hanging out right there. Flappy thing on the left is the left auricle. I'm just going to write OR for left auricle. Don't do that in your test. Now, what else can I say? Well, I know this is my right ventricle that I'm in right here. And if I walk up my right ventricle, bum, 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 I walk up the right ventricle, I get to this blood vessel right here. I get to this tube. So what blood vessel comes out of the right ventricle? It is, of course, the pulmonary trunk. Okay, it is the pulmonary trunk, which is taking blood onward to the lungs. If I find that pulmonary trunk, I notice it's really like in between the two auricles. It is in the front. So it's a third clue. We got the diagonal sulcus, the two auricle flaps, and the pulmonary trunk, all telling you that this is the front. If I go behind my pulmonary trunk, I'm going to find typically two blood vessels. Sometimes it'll be cut short, so there'll only be one. But in this case, we got two. The one that is more to the sheep's right is going to be that brachiocephalic artery. So number 3 right there is the brachiocephalic artery. And it is actually coming off of this guy right here. This is actually your aorta curving right there. Now, sometimes on these sheep hearts, the aorta is cut like low and early, so you don't see the brachiocephalic coming off. All right, so that is pretty much everything that we can see in the front. So let's look at another sheep heart. Check this guy out. If you want, pause the video and see if you can see the 3 things that let you know it's the front. Okay? I know I got everything labeled here, but see if you can figure out why it's the front. Talk it out to yourself. Now, go ahead and do that. All right, you're back. And what I see first of all is this diagonal fatty line here. That is my anterior interventricular sulcus. That's in my front. So I know I got my right ventricle here, my left ventricle here. I know I got my apex at the bottom of the left ventricle. I find my beautiful flaps. There's flap on the right. That's my right auricle. And over here I got my flap on the left. That's my left auricle. And again, my flaps are in the front. And like we did last time, if we walk up the right ventricle, step by step by step, we run into a blood vessel right here. He's kind of squished, but that's our pulmonary trunk. Now in this view, it's kind of hard to see the aorta and brachiocephalic behind it, but they would be back there. It's another nice anterior sheep heart that we got going on here. All right, what do I got here? I got another anterior sheep heart. He's a little twisted though, like he's a little turned away from you, like you're looking more at his left. But again, we got some common things here. Look at that guy right there. That's our anterior interventricular sulcus going diagonally that way, which means we got our right ventricle over here. We got our left ventricle over here. We got our apex down here. Now there is that flap on the left. That is my left auricle. And again, as before, if I'm in the right ventricle and I walk, I get to my pulmonary trunk. Okay, that's probably my least favorite of these three pictures, but I like that it's a little bit different, you know? Okay, good stuff, good stuff. What I've done now is flip this guy to the back. And again, landmarks. I want to show you something right off the bat here. Look at this more vertical sulcus here, more vertical line of fat right here. That is my posterior interventricular sulcus. So diagonal in the front, and it is more vertical in the back. Again, interventricular, between the ventricles. So because I'm looking at the back, now the sheep's left is my left. There's the left ventricle, and there is the right ventricle. If I walk up, I can see a little bit of my right auricle right there. You see that little wrinkly guy right there? I can also see some other stuff going on. All right, so this is my right atrium right here. This is my right atrium. Remember, the auricle is part of the right atrium. I have a hole in the top, keyword there, in the top of the right atrium. That hole in the top of the right atrium is my superior vena cava. I don't see the inferior vena cava in this particular view, but I do see some other blood vessels. I do see my aorta and my brachiocephalic artery. Okay? If we found that pulmonary trunk in the front, that helped us find this guy previously. And there they are again. Brachiocephalic trunk is kind of like first, aorta is kind of second, aorta is kind of bigger, brachiocephalic is kind of smaller. Now over here, I've got a little chunk of my left atrium, and this is an opening in it. It is an opening for one of my pulmonary veins. Notice how the atria, by the way, are above this layer of fat right here. So this layer of fat running like transversely is a good clue to let you know, okay, I kind of got to the top of my ventricles, and my atria are going to be above them. And so a hole in that left atrium, again, sheep's left is my left, hole in that left atrium is going to be your pulmonary vein. Now, of course, you have four. I just got one labeled here. Okay. Let's see. I have no idea how many sheep heart pictures I'm going to be showing you right now. We're going to find out together. Oh, I like this one. It's a little weird of an angle, but I like it nonetheless. We are in the back. If you can see, there is that vertical sulcus right there. Check out this big clumpy of fat right here. All right, that clumpy of fat is above the ventricles. Here's our left. Here's our right ventricle. And remember, interventricular sulcus, right? So what I've got going on up here, this is my right atrium. You can see kind of like the ridges, the wrinklies of the auricle over here. Over here, I got my left atrium. Again, you can see the auricle over here. Now, what I like about this picture is they've stuck a probe in the top of the right atrium in a hole there, and the probe came out of the bottom. So what we've beautifully found, and I love doing this on a lab exam too, because it really lets you figure out these two blood vessels. But the top hole, of course, superior vena cava. Bottom hole, of course, inferior vena cava. Now, if I find a hole, it's hard to see, but there is a hole right here. In my left atrium, that's going to be one of those pulmonary veins. And I do have two blood vessels here, brachiocephalic and the aorta. When I'm looking at it from the back, my aorta is more to my left, which is the sheep's left. It was the same thing on the front. The aorta was more to my right, which is the sheep's left. Now, you got to get in there and play with the sheep heart too. Don't just look at pictures and watch videos. They can be helpful, of course, but you got to play with it too. All right, let's see what we got going on. Oh, sweet. We've opened up the right ventricle. So there's two things that help me figure out I've opened the right ventricle. Number one, the wall is relatively thin. Now, of course, ventricles have a thicker wall than atria because ventricles are pumps, but the right ventricle is far skinnier than the left. Now, remember, they pump the same amount of blood, but the left ventricle has to pump with more pressure because it goes farther, and more pressure means I need more muscle. Now, I also see this big piece stretching across the right ventricle, like going across the lumen from the septum is over here, to that anterior wall. And this guy is a structure called the moderator band. This is new to us, so we didn't see this in our heart model. Now, we have them in our human hearts, but the heart model doesn't show it because we tend to have kind of thin and small moderator bands, whereas sheep tend to have big moderator bands. Now, originally and erroneously, the moderator band was thought to prevent the ventricle from like stretching too much, but that's not what it does. It is just part of the electrical conduction pathway. It's part of the means by which depolarization waves travel through the ventricles, through the right ventricle at least. Now, pulmonary trunk has been cut open up here. I can't really see it nicely, but when we cut open the pulmonary trunk, we will find some half-moon-shaped valve flaps. So we would find some semilunar valve flaps up here. Hopefully I'll show you that in another picture. All right. So now we've sliced open a heart so we can see both the left and the right side. Now, how can I tell the difference? Well, look at this wall right here and compare it to this giant, thick wall over here. So this must be my left ventricle. This is going to be my right ventricle. Now, in my right ventricle, I beautifully see some ridges of muscle. Remember, ridges of muscle in the ventricular wall are called trabeculae carnii. Okay? Oh, I do have my beautiful septum right here. Look at that nice ventricular septum. There's the apex down there. Now, because of the thickness, I know this is the left ventricle. So I can see these strings. These strings are a great clue. The strings, of course, are chordae tendineae. If I travel upward on the strings, I find valve flaps. Let me put some purple dots on my valve flaps, okay? Since I'm on the left, the valve flaps with the chordae tendineae are flaps of my mitral or bicuspid valve. Now, if I follow the chordae tendineae down, I get a big bulgy muscle. That is a papillary muscle. Remember, papillary muscles anchor the chordae tendineae, and the chordae tendineae prevent the valves from flipping upward, which we learned was called prolapse. Now, this is my aortic semilunar valve right here. Kind of hard to tell, but that is my aortic semilunar valve. That is my aorta right here. Here's the inside of my atrium up here. And of course, don't forget about your layers, right? If I'm on the lining of a chamber, I'm on endocardium. If I'm on the outside, which I don't really see in this picture, but I saw it in previous pictures. I'm on the epicardium, and then if I'm in that muscular meat, either in the septum here, in the wall over here, I'm in the myocardium. Okay. Pay good attention to the question, like if it says layer, chamber, structure, or function for that matter. Don't mess it up because you didn't read it. All right. Here we have another beautifully opened ventricle. And what I really like about this is I can totally see the chordae tendineae. Look at those chordae tendineae. And when I find the chordae tendineae, I go up. And when I go up, I find a valve. Now, how do I know if it's tricuspid or bicuspid? We'll check it out. What do I notice over here? The wall is thin. So thin wall is going to tell me it is my right side, which is going to tell me it is my tricuspid valve. Remember, tricuspid is on the right. Now, if I go down from my ventricle, from my chordae tendineae, I get to this bulge of muscle right there. And that bulge of muscle is a papillary muscle. So I would stick a pin right in that thing and say name the structure. You would say papillary muscle. And you'd get it totally correct. There will be plenty of sheep hearts on your exam. So don't not learn the sheep. That just sounds terrible. All right. How would you know what ventricle this is, what chamber this is? You would look at the incredible thickness. And you would say, okay, that's the left. There's our apex down there. You see chordae tendineae. You say, okay, chordae tendineae, take me up to a valve and down to a papillary muscle. So here is my valve flap. Since I know it's on the left, it is going to be my mitral valve. If I go down, I get to that bulging muscle, which is a papillary muscle. All right. We're doing so well here. Okay, this is like a really zoomed in up close picture, but this guy right here, this is a cut open pulmonary trunk. So this is a cut open pulmonary trunk right here. And if you cut the pulmonary trunk open, you see these little crescent-like pockets. And little crescent-like pockets in an artery are going to be semilunar valves. This is the pulmonary trunk. I could figure that out by noticing whether I'm in the front and whether I'm coming out of the right ventricle. And so these little flappy guys here are my pulmonary semilunar valve flaps. Fantastic. I'd bet you dollars to donuts that if there's a semilunar valve on your test, it's going to be the pulmonary one, not the aortic one, because the pulmonary one is a lot easier to see and find and tag. All right. Good stuff, good stuff. Let's see. Oh, that was my last slide. Short-ish video today, 18 minutes. Hopefully you stayed the whole way through. Hopefully this is helpful. This is the last video before your first exam, so good luck on that. Let me know how you did, and I'll see you later.